ethical issues relating to the intellectual disabilities in the famous novel Flowers for Algernon. Hi, this video of mine is going to be an analysis, a book review of one of my favorite novels of all time, Flowers for Algernon. Um, this is dedicated for my students, and there are many material and subjects and thoughts I would like to give you because it's more than just a science fiction novel. It contains very deep thoughts about the intellectual disability and how it can be a curse, and how much misery it can cause to a certain person suffering from or being born with an intellectual disability. And I would also like to point out some ethical issues that can be found in this novel, in this beautiful novel. I first read it in high school, and I became an instant fan of the book. I cannot tell you how many times I've read it. But before getting to the main analysis, which the title represents, so the intellectual disabilities and the so-called ethical issues that can be found in the book, I would like to give you a short summary of what this beautiful book, Flowers for Algernon, is about. Well, the story of the novel presents Charlie Gordon, a mentally challenged adult who gets nominated for experimental surgery to enhance his intelligence level. His eagerness to learn more has prompted his teacher, Alice Kinnean at the Beekman College, to recommend him for his experiment as directed by Dr. Strauss, accompanied by their other associates. Both the doctor as well as the professor advised Charlie Gordon to write his experience as a journal or a diary about the progress in his intelligence. As far as Charlie's career is concerned, he was working. You have to take it into consideration that he's very mentally challenged, and he was working in the novel in Donner's Bakery as a delivery boy. He also works as a janitor over there during his free time. Despite his being a center of laughing and mockery of his colleagues, he demonstrates indifference to them, considering them his friends. So all the people who in the book laugh and he gets to be a joke all the time of others. He gets made fun of every time by his so-called friends. And the saddest part, that he's not intelligent enough to recognize that they are not his friends at the bakery. The doctors decide to bring him to compete with a mouse, a super intelligent mouse called Algernon. The mouse that has already been operated upon, they conduct a surgery upon him. Although he does not see any, Charlie does not see any instant change following his operation. His friend who works at the Beekman College works with him to improve his linguistic skills, and of course to raise his intellectual level, which is very low at the end of the book. Finally, he starts reading and becoming proficient in reading books. On the other hand, he also shows after the operation improvement in his work at the bakery. Whenever he initiates some new productivity tools in the bakery, his co-workers become nervous, the so-called friends, who were laughing at them all the time. Now that he's intelligent, he starts to understand that his co-workers are laughing with him to keep him at bay. Very sad in the novel. Once he finds out that one at the staff in the bakery was stealing and faces the moral dilemma, or whether to tell the truth to the owner, Donner, or not. So in the book, he's presented with an idea whether he should tell the owner of the bakery that one of his co-workers, one of his friends, so-called friends, has been stealing. When discussed with Alice, his friend, she asks him to follow his heart, so he informs the owner about the stealing, realizing that he's capable of dealing moral dilemmas on his own, which he lacked in the past. So his IQ, as mentioned in the book, was 68, which is very low, and he couldn't comprehend all the hints, all the hints that, and all the actions that took place at the bakery, and all in his uh, um, environment. So he was lacking the skills to understand what was going on around him. Interestingly, he starts to feel attached to Alice more than he thinks after being more intelligent. Despite her professionalism, stays with him. Alice decides to stay with him. Finally, he leaves his job after the owner, Donner, sees him more capable, while his so-called relationship with Alice too grows, though he sometimes feels that his reflection in his old self and realizes his traumatic past. We have to also emphasize that there's a very sad part in the book when we get some flashbacks of his childhood. His mother, the lack of love coming from her mother, who wanted to put her in a place for intellectually disabled people, and it's very traumatic to read that the family wanted to get rid of him. And we also have to mention her sister, who genuinely hated his own brother, Charlie, namely Charlie. But he finds that he was unable to be close with Alice because of the past with his mother, I already mentioned, who happened to beat him as a child for the slightest sensual impulses. Throughout the novel, in spite of his family abandoning him and leaving him totally alone, he lives in this city without family and without friends. He still tries very hard to make them proud. This character in the book just really wants to be loved and wants to be smart and intelligent. He thinks that his mother would take him back and love him if he became intelligent, and that's why in the book he decides to agree with the doctors to do the experiment. That was the first main intention for Charlie, for be like other people and not be different and be accepted. So to get to some other thoughts that I have written, that throughout the novel, in spite of his family, who is non-existent, so-called non-existent, he barely sees them. He never sees them. When he is parodied in the Chicago demonstration along with the professor, Dr. Strauss, he feels that Professor Namur is treating him like an animal having gone under experiment. That is a very ethical and very sad issue in the book, that the doctors condescend Charlie and consider him to be just a clown for an experiment. Charlie, was outraged in the novel at this treatment, and he frees Algernon at the conference. He himself leaves the exhibition and hides himself in his apartment with Algernon. He soon realizes the sad fact, the transience of his capability, and meets his neighbor, a very promiscuous and very easygoing Faye Lillman, and becomes intimate with her. This was the first intimate relationship in the novel for Charlie. The Foundation reaches out to Charlie, mentioning that he could continue to research himself. Although he returns to his lab, he does not feel commended. He even abandons this woman, Faye, after being intimate with her. And after we read along in the novel, Professor Nemmer's hypothesis has a setback, and the result and a sad reality that the effect of Charlie's intelligence gain is only short term. So it's only for a short period of time. When it happens his intelligence happens to be on a high level and starts to relapse to his own to his old self. Algernon becomes erratic, making Charlie fear for the evaporation of his intelligence too. When this mouse Algernon dies, he's traumatic, fearing death coming to him sooner or later. Therefore, Charlie thinks it's necessary to visit his mother to show him how smart and how intelligent he has become. Maybe she can love him now, as Charlie thinks. When he sees when her mother sees him, she becomes overjoyed and he feels relieved at the sudden welcome. However, we have to point out the fact that he is surprised to see his mother attacking him in the novel with a knife. He then feels his own individuality and escapes to save his life. So again, the abandonment by her mother comes again, even after he's intelligent. Afterwards, he thinks that he has found a mistake, and being much more intelligent than the professors at the college, that he finds a mistake in professors' numerous idea that intelligence could evaporate as quickly as it has been installed. He labels this as the Algernon-Gordon effect and feels that he is regressing to his former disabled self, as I already mentioned. So he starts to lose his intelligence, to be simply put. Excuse me. So now after the summary of the book, I would like to talk about some important questions that that came to my mind after reading the book so many times. The first one is the loss of identity. Loss of identity is another theme that reflected through Charlie Gordon and the experiment to raise his intelligence. In the beginning, he feels that his identity, that he's a worker at Donner's bakery where he enjoys that and feels happy with his co-workers, but when he thinks that he's undergoing surgery to acquire a much higher level of intelligence, he thinks that this is his new identity. He faces the ethical dilemma when turning to Jim P. at the bakery for stealing things. Excuse me. Therefore, he faces the miserable fact that even after being intelligent, he's still not accepted. And the other question that is heartbreaking for me is the unethical treatment of the doctors. So I would like to give point out a question, whether it was in the 70s America where lobotomy was still existent in the medicine, whether it is a rightful thing to do with a very mentally challenged person to treat him just like an experimental mouse. So that is the sad question. Excuse me, I got a little cold. And human relations, which is very connected to this intelligence being present but still not being accepted by the co-workers, by the relationship with women and with even the so-called friends. So even though he has reached an intelligence, it shows that Charlie is still on the level of a mentally retarded person when it comes to human relations. So he can't connect to a romantic relationship, even though he's very intelligent, like a genius. And he, of course, sexuality and love, he can't be present in this. He is not despite his intelligence, he can't form relationships with either with Alice or either with the other woman. And in my opinion, it was a maltreatment, and it's very Keith, the writer of the book, beautifully presented the idea of maltreatment toward other human beings based on their weaker points. Charlie Gordon, first of all, is mentally fragile. Fragile means weak, as he cannot think linearly at the beginning of the novel. The reason that all the others treat him in the same way, while his master at the bakery also exploits him and gives him just some change, so not a real salary. And memory. This book is very full with memories, painful memories from his childhood. And the saddest part of the book, that when he starts to lose his intelligence, and at the end of the book, he he becomes just like in the beginning. And his final words is a kind of showing a love for this Algernon after the mouse dies, and he tells these words. I quote from the novel, in case you haven't read it yet, that don't forget to put flowers on Algernon's grave. So this was my analysis of the book. I will send you the written pages, the essay in written form, through email, and we will talk about it the next lesson.